My daughter called from a sleepover and casually asked, "Mom, what was our emergency word again?" My phone buzzed against a stack of Ava's folded leggings at 9:47 p.m., and for exactly 4 seconds, I thought it was going to be a normal call. The TV was on low in the next room, some home renovation show I wasn't really watching. A candle I'd forgotten to blow out was burning down to nothing on the dresser, vanilla and something floral underneath it. I'd been folding laundry for 20 minutes, half my brain already on the grocery list I still needed to finish before Saturday, when Ava's contact photo, her gap-toothed third-grade school picture, the one she'd begged me to change and I'd never gotten around to, lit up the screen. "Hey, sweetie," I said, propping it between my shoulder and ear so I could keep folding. "Hey, Mom." Her voice was doing something I'd only heard it do once before, years ago, in a grocery store parking lot when she was 6 and briefly lost, too rehearsed, like she was reading her own lines off a card taped inside her skull. "Quick question. What was our emergency word again?" I totally forgot. My hands went still over the laundry. We hadn't used that phrase in 3 years. We'd built it back when she was 8, half as a joke, half because I couldn't stand the thought of her ever being somewhere she needed rescuing from and not having the words to ask. I didn't know yet where she was calling from, or why, or what again she was talking about. I only knew that the rule we'd made together years ago at our own kitchen table had exactly one condition attached to it. When she asked that question in that tone, I didn't ask why. I just came. "It's cardinal, baby," I said, keeping my own voice as flat and ordinary as hers. "You remembered right, though. You want me to come grab that thing from Dad's car?" "Yeah," she said. "That'd be great." The line went dead 4 seconds later. I didn't know it yet, standing in my bedroom with a pair of leggings still folded over one arm, but the next 90 minutes would be the longest of my life, and everything I'd done right about to matter in ways I'd spent years hoping I'd never have to find out. I'd built the code word system almost by accident, the way most parents build the systems that end up mattering most. Ava was 8, and I'd read some article, one of 100 articles you skim at 1 a.m. while nursing a second kid to sleep, about kids not having language for situations that felt wrong, but weren't dramatic enough to explain out loud, especially in front of the person making them feel that way. The article suggested a phrase. I turned it into a game instead. We picked cardinal together at the kitchen table over grilled cheese, because Ava liked the bird, and we practiced it a few times that year the way you practice a fire drill, solemnly, a little bored, never actually expecting to use it. There was a smaller reason underneath the article, one I didn't tell many people. When Ava was 6, at a birthday party at a trampoline park, she'd wandered off for 11 minutes while I was talking to another mom about preschool waitlists, and by the time I found her, crouched behind a vending machine, not lost exactly, just overwhelmed by the noise, I understood with total clarity that I had no idea what she would have said to a stranger, or to me, if something worse than noise had scared her that day. The code word wasn't really about kidnappers or the dramatic scenarios the articles like to use as bait. It was about giving her a tool for the boring, common, much more likely version of danger, a sleepover that turned into something else, a ride from someone who'd had too much to drink, a situation with no clean edges she could explain out loud without making things worse for herself in the moment. The rule was simple, and I'll admit, a little extreme by the standards of most of the other parents I knew. If Ava asked me to remind her of our emergency word, in that specific, too casual tone, I didn't ask a single question on the phone. I said the word back like it was nothing, hung up, and came. No interrogation, no, "Are you sure?" No risk of her having to explain herself out loud to whoever might be standing 3 feet away listening to her side of the call. We'd talk about the actual why once she was safely in my car. I'd told her, more than once, half joking, that she could use it if she just wanted to leave a boring party too, that the word wasn't only for emergencies, it was for anything that felt like one to her. No permission required, no explanation owed. I think that promise was the only reason she trusted it enough to use it for real. Ava was 11 now, sharp and a little shy, the kind of kid who still slept with a nightlight shaped like a moon, and could also, apparently, hold her voice steady enough to fool a room full of teenagers. She'd been dropped off that evening at 214 Larkspur Lane for a sleepover with her friend Josie. An ordinary Friday, an ordinary bag packed with her favorite blanket, a half-eaten bag of pretzels, and a paperback she'd already read twice. I'd known Josie's mother, Priscilla, for 4 years, since the girls met in 3rd grade over a shared love of a cartoon about talking horses. Priscilla was out of town for a work conference that weekend, which was the only unusual detail, and not one that had worried me. Josie's older sister Zoe, 16, had watched the girls plenty of times before, always responsibly, always with a curfew and a locked front door, and her mother's number taped to the fridge next to a grocery list that never seemed to get any shorter. I'd had no reason to think tonight would be any different. That was, I would understand very soon, exactly the kind of trust Zoe had been counting on. I opened the Fam Ping app before I'd even grabbed my keys, my hands steadier than they had any right to be. Muscle memory from 100 ordinary check-ins taking over where panic wanted to. The blue dot wasn't at 214 Larkspur Lane. It was pulsing from a Marathon gas station on Route 9, 4 miles away, the little timestamp beneath it reading 9:44 p.m., 3 minutes before Ava had called me. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds, the way you stare at a math problem that's giving you an answer you don't want to accept, and told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe they'd walked to get snacks. Maybe Zoe had needed gas and brought the girls along for the ride. A 5-minute detour I was reading too much into. I told myself that for exactly as long as it took me to notice, the pin hadn't moved in 11 minutes. A quick gas run doesn't sit still for 11 minutes at 9:44 on a Friday night. My stomach dropped the way it does right before you're sure of something you were hoping to be wrong about. My hands found my keys and my wallet without my brain fully directing them, the way you move through a house fire drill you never thought you'd actually need. I tried my husband Isaiah next, 3 states away at a logistics conference, his phone probably face down on a hotel nightstand while he sat through some evening dinner with clients. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message that came out steadier than I felt. Something like, "Call me the second you get this. It's about Ava. She's okay, but I need you," and got in the car before I'd even finished the sentence in my head. I called Priscilla next, hands shaking now in a way they hadn't when I was folding laundry, in a way that made it hard to hit the right contact on the first try. She picked up on the second ring, background noise of a hotel bar behind her. "Dana, everything okay? Is the sleepover still at your house?" I asked. Or did it move somewhere? A pause that told me everything before she said a word. "It's at the house." "Why would it move?" "Because Ava's location is pinging from a gas station on Route 9, I said. 4 miles from Larkspur Lane, and it hasn't moved in over 10 minutes. That's Dana. Zoe knows she's not supposed to take them anywhere. I'll call her right now. I'm already driving, I said. Call me back the second you hear anything. She never did call back with an answer. Zoe didn't pick up for her mother any more than she'd have picked up for me. I understood. Gripping the wheel at a red light, I barely registered turning green. That whatever Priscilla was about to find out, she was going to find it out at the exact same moment I did. Too late to do anything but watch it happen from 3 states away. I called 911 from the car, merging onto Route 9, doing 11 over the speed limit with my hazards on out of some instinct that felt more useful than it probably was. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was calm in the specific, trained way that made my own voice sound unhinged by comparison. My 11-year-old daughter used a code word with me on the phone 20 minutes ago, I said. Her location's been pinging from a gas station on Route 9 near mile marker 4 for the last 15 minutes. She's supposed to be at a supervised sleepover 4 miles away. I think she's somewhere she's not safe. Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line and keep your speed reasonable. What's your name? Dana Whitfield. Okay, Dana. My name's Odette Salazar. I've been dispatching for this county for 11 years, and I've got a unit already routing toward that location based on your daughter's last confirmed ping. Can you tell me anything else about who she's with? Her friend's older sister, I said. Zoe, 16. She was supposed to be babysitting. Copy that. Keep driving safe, Dana. I'm staying on with you. My phone buzzed with a second call waiting, a text notification underneath it from Ava's number, sent at what I'd realized later was enormous personal risk. Mom, I'm okay, but there are older boys here and some PPL are drinking. I want to leave, but Zoe took my phone. I had to sneak this. I read it twice at the next stoplight, my hands not shaking anymore, gone past shaking into something colder and steadier. I relayed it to Odette word for word. We're updating the responding units now, she said. You're 4 minutes out based on your location. Stay on the phone with me the whole way. The marathon station's fluorescent lights were the first normal thing I saw in 20 minutes. Bright, ordinary, a teenager behind the counter scrolling his phone, completely unaware that 4 miles from where he stood, something was quietly going wrong for a kid who wasn't even in his line of sight. I pulled in anyway, some part of me needing to see the actual place with my own eyes instead of trusting a blue dot on a screen. I ran inside, breathless, and asked the clerk, his name tag said Deshawn, if he remembered seeing a group of teenage girls in the last half hour, one of them maybe 11, brown hair, purple backpack. He squinted, genuinely trying to help. Couple girls got out of a car, went to the bathroom. One of them was crying a little. Older girl hustled them back in fast. Didn't buy anything. It matched nothing and everything at once. Confirmation that Ava had been here, physically, real, and recent, and also that whatever had happened in that parking lot hadn't been the end of the night, just a stop along the way. Ava's blue dot had moved again while I was standing in that fluorescent lit aisle, sliding 2 miles further down a side street I didn't recognize, toward an apartment complex called Birchwood Court. I told Odette, sprinting back to the car. She told me the responding officer was already redirecting. Officer Malia Bishop, Odette said. 9 years with the department. She'll meet you there. Do not go into that building alone, Dana. I need you to promise me that. I promised her the way you promise things you're not entirely sure you'll keep. I got to Birchwood Court 90 seconds before the patrol car did. Engine still running, both hands white-knuckled on the wheel, staring up at a second-floor apartment with every light on and the muffled bass of music I could feel through my closed windows. My whole body had gone into the kind of stillness that isn't calm at all. It's just fear that's run out of room to move. I counted the windows twice, trying to guess which one might be hers, trying to remember whether Odette had said 2B or 2C, my throat too tight to actually say any of it out loud, when the dispatcher asked if I was still on the line. 90 seconds felt like 20 minutes. I thought about every version of what I might find up there and made myself stop, the way you make yourself stop looking directly at the sun. Officer Bishop's cruiser pulled in behind me, lights on but no siren, and she was out of the car before I'd finished unbuckling my seatbelt. You're Dana? Stay behind me. That's my daughter's phone location, I said, pointing up at apartment 2C. She's 11. I've got backup 2 minutes out, Bishop said. We're not waiting for it. The door was answered by a girl I didn't recognize. 17 maybe, holding a red cup she tried and failed to hide tied behind her hip, and the apartment behind her fell into a ragged kind of silence as Officer Bishop stepped through the doorway with her badge already visible. "I'm looking for an 11-year-old girl named Ava Whitfield," Bishop said, voice carrying easily over music someone had the sense to kill immediately. "Now." Someone in the kitchen swore under their breath. A boy near the window set his cup down on the sill so carefully it looked rehearsed, like he'd practiced exactly this moment in his head at some point and never expected to need it. I stood in the doorway for a second that felt like it lasted an entire year, scanning faces that all seemed to be doing the same math at once. How much trouble? How fast? Who's going to be blamed first? I saw her before Bishop finished the sentence. In the corner of what I'd learned later was Tessa Iverson's living room, sitting stiff and small on the arm of a couch 3 sizes too big for the room, sandwiched between 2 boys who looked closer to 18 than 16. One of them still holding her phone loosely enough that I could see her hand twitch toward it without quite reaching. Zoe stood near the kitchen doorway, red cup in her own hand, her face doing the specific kind of collapse a teenager's face does when a plan they were certain wouldn't get caught finally, unmistakably has. "Mom," Ava said, and her voice cracked on the single word in a way it hadn't cracked once on the entire 15-minute phone call that had started all of this. I crossed that room faster than I've ever moved in my life. I don't remember deciding to do it. I just remember my arms were around her, and her whole body was shaking the way mine had been an hour earlier. And somewhere behind me I heard Officer Bishop's voice, flat and procedural, telling everyone in that living room to stay exactly where they were. "I tried to leave twice," Ava said into my shoulder, her voice small and fast, the words spilling out now that she finally had somewhere safe to put them. "Zoe kept saying just a little longer, and then she took my phone when I tried to text you again. And I didn't. Mom, I didn't drink anything, I promise. I just wanted to go home." "I know," I said, and I did know, in the specific, unshakable way you know something the second you see your child's face and understand exactly how close a night came to going a different way. "I know, baby. You did everything right." Officer Bishop separated the room methodically, the 2 older boys against one wall, IDs out. Zoe by herself near the kitchen, her earlier bravado gone entirely. Tessa Iverson, whose apartment it was, sitting on her own kitchen floor with her face in her hands. Once she understood her parents' empty condo for the weekend, had just become the scene of a police response. A second patrol car arrived within minutes, then a third. Someone had apparently called it in from inside the party too, once things started to unravel, a detail I only learned later and never fully sorted out who. Bishop crouched down to Ava's eye level once the room was under control, her voice gentler now than it had been at the door. "You did the smart thing tonight," she said. "Sneaking that text took guts. A lot of adults wouldn't have thought that clearly under pressure." Ava, still gripping the front of my shirt with one fist, managed a small wobbly nod. I gave my statement standing in the parking lot under a streetlight that buzzed every few seconds. Ava wrapped in the blanket Bishop had pulled from her own trunk, refusing to leave my side even to sit in the car. I answered every question I could. I confirmed the code word, the timeline, the texts, all of it laid out flat and factual in a way that felt strange after 90 minutes of pure animal panic, like translating something that had happened entirely in my body back into language a report could hold. Isaiah called back somewhere around midnight, his voice cracking the second I picked up, already halfway through booking a flight home before I'd finished the first 2 sentences of what had happened. "I should have been there," he kept saying, and I told him over and over that there was nothing he could have done from 3 states away that I hadn't already done from 4 miles, that the plan we'd built together years ago had worked exactly the way it was supposed to, that Ava was safe, upstairs, asleep, or trying to be. He flew home on the first flight out anyway, landing before 9 the next morning, and I don't think either of us said much of anything when he walked through the door. He just held both of us for a long time in the kitchen, Ava still in her pajamas, none of us in any hurry to let go first. That first night, though, it was just the 2 of us. I sat on the edge of Ava's bed long after she should have been asleep, watching her breathe in the dark, the moon nightlight throwing its soft, pale shape across the ceiling, the way it had every night since she was 4. She'd asked me, half asleep already, whether Zoe was going to be okay, which wasn't the question I expected and somehow broke my heart more than anything that had happened in that apartment. "I don't know yet, baby," I told her, "but you did everything right. That's what matters tonight." "I was really scared," she said, so quietly I almost missed it. "I know, me too." I smoothed her hair back from her forehead, the way I had when she was small enough to fit against my chest instead of just my shoulder. "But you knew exactly what to do. That's not luck. That's you." She was asleep before I finished the sentence. I stayed another 20 minutes anyway, just watching her chest rise and fall before I finally trusted myself to leave the room. Detective Foster Adeyemi called me 2 days later, 16 years investigating juvenile cases behind a voice that managed to sound both tired and completely unsurprised by anything I told him. Underage drinking, furnishing alcohol to minors, and endangerment charges were being prepared against the 2 older boys, who turned out to be 18 and 19, not the 16 and 17 I'd assumed in the dark of that living room. One of them, it emerged, had a car registered in his own name, with an empty case of beer still in the trunk, when patrol officers did a walk around outside, evidence Adeyemi said would matter more to a prosecutor than almost anything said inside the apartment itself. Zoe, being a minor herself, wouldn't face criminal charges, but the county's Family Services Division was opening a file on the incident regardless. A formality, Adeyemi said, but one one that would follow the paperwork if anything similar ever happened again. Your daughter's text, he told me, is going to matter a lot in this. Kids don't usually leave that kind of paper trail. Most of them are too scared or too loyal to whoever's running the show to reach for their phone at all. The timestamp alone corroborates everything. When she sent it, what she said, how it lines up against the location, pings your carrier already handed over. That's not testimony a defense attorney can easily poke holes in. What happens to the boys? I asked. Arraignment's set for next month. Furnishing alcohol to a minor carries real weight in this county, especially stacked with endangerment. I've seen these plead down to probation and a fine more often than I'd like, but the older one, the one with the car, he's looking at something closer to actual consequences if the DA runs with what we've got. He paused. I've done this a long time. Most nights like this one end somewhere worse than yours did. I want you to sit with that for a second because I don't think you have yet. I thought about the code word conversation I'd had with an 8-year-old over grilled cheese 3 years before either of us could have imagined a night like this one and didn't say anything for a second. She had practice, I finally said. We built the whole thing on purpose. Well, Adeyemi said, it worked. Priscilla flew home the next morning, and the conversation she and I had at my kitchen table 2 days after that was one of the hardest either of us had ever sat through. Not because either of us wanted to blame the other, but because we both understood, in the plain daylight of a Tuesday afternoon, exactly how close the gap had been between a responsible 16-year-old we trusted completely and an unsupervised apartment 4 miles away with older boys and alcohol in it. Zoe lost her babysitting privileges indefinitely. She lost her phone for a month, her car privileges for longer, and, from what Priscilla told me later, something harder to name than any of those: the quiet, permanent erosion of a trust her parents had never had reason to question before that Friday. She said she just wanted one night that wasn't about watching 2 little kids, Priscilla told me, turning her coffee mug slowly between her hands, not quite meeting my eyes. She said she thought she had it under control. She almost did, I said. That's the part that scares me more than if she'd been careless from the start. I keep thinking about what would have happened if Ava didn't have that word, Priscilla said. If she'd just been a kid at a party who didn't know how to say anything was wrong. I don't know what that night looks like. I don't want to know. I didn't either. I told her so, and for a while we just sat there, 2 mothers who'd built their whole friendship around trusting each other's judgment, quietly recalibrating exactly how much of that trust could survive contact with a single Friday night. I heard through the loose network of parents who all somehow end up knowing everyone else's business eventually, that the older boy's parents, the one whose car had the empty case in the trunk, had hired an attorney within 48 hours and were telling anyone who'd listen that their son had made a bad decision, not a criminal one. I understood the impulse. I might have said something similar myself once about a version of my own kid I hadn't yet had reason to worry about. It didn't make it easier to hear. I thought a lot in the weeks after about how ordinary that Friday had looked right up until it wasn't. A familiar address, a trusted family, a 16-year-old who'd never once given anyone reason to doubt her. I don't think there's a way to armor a kid against every version of that gap. I just think you can give them one word, agreed on years in advance over grilled cheese at your own kitchen table, and trust that when it matters, they'll remember to use it, and that you'll be steady enough when they do, not to ask why until it's safe to. It would be months before Zoe worked up the nerve to say anything to me directly, catching me of all places, in the school pickup line, blurting out that she knew none of it fixed anything. She just needed me to know that she knew. I didn't have a clean answer for her that day, and I still don't, entirely. I told her I appreciated her saying it, and I meant it, and I also watched her walk away thinking about how close 16 and responsible had come to not being enough, and how grateful I was that 11 and prepared had been. I took Ava to see her pediatrician the following week, more for my own peace of mind than because anything was physically wrong. Dr. Ren Callahan, 12 years in practice, ran through the usual checks and pronounced her completely fine, a little tired, a little quieter than her chart notes from the year before. Nothing a good stretch of ordinary Fridays wouldn't eventually smooth back out. Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for, Dr. Callahan said, especially when they know, concretely, that the adults in their life actually showed up when it counted. That part matters more than almost anything else in how they process something like this. I held on to that sentence longer than I probably needed to. Dr. Callahan recommended a few sessions with someone who specialized in exactly this kind of thing, and we saw a counselor named Renata Iwu twice that month, mostly so Ava would have somewhere to put the parts of the story she wasn't ready to say out loud to me yet. Renata told me, in the 5 minutes she gave parents at the end of each session, that Ava talked more about the drive home than about the apartment itself, about watching me come through that door, about the specific relief of not having to explain anything before I already understood. She keeps coming back to the fact that you didn't ask her why on the phone, Renata said. That's doing a lot of the healing work already, honestly. Kids who have to justify themselves in the moment carry something different afterward than kids who just get to be rescued. Ava didn't want to talk about that night much with me at first, and I didn't push her. We'd agreed on that rule together too, years before any of this, the same way we'd agreed on Cardinal. She went back to school that Monday, quieter than usual for the first week, and I watched her carefully without hovering, the particular balancing act of trying to be available without being suffocating. Josie texted her every day that week, small ordinary things. A meme, a question about homework, nothing about the party at all, which I think was was exactly the kind of normalcy Ava needed most. Zoe didn't reach out, and I didn't expect her to. Priscilla told me later that Zoe had asked once, quietly, whether Ava hated her. Priscilla hadn't known what to tell her. 3 weeks later, folding laundry again, my phone lit up with a text from her, sent from the next room over. Mom, what was our emergency word again? LOL. My heart did something complicated for exactly 1 second before I read the next line. JK, I just wanted to see if you'd panic. It's cardinal. I remember. I stood there in my bedroom, laundry basket balanced against one hip, and laughed. Actually laughed. The real kind, not the brittle kind I'd been doing more of since that Friday. Because somewhere in the last 3 weeks, the phrase that had once meant the worst 90 minutes of my life had quietly turned back into what it was always supposed to be underneath the fear. Proof that she trusted the system enough to joke about it, and proof that the system had never once, not for a second, let her down when it mattered. I texted back a single word, cardinal. Then I went back to folding, the way I had been 3 weeks earlier, before everything, and let myself finally just be ordinarily, ridiculously relieved. Outside, the streetlights were coming on one by one down our block, and somewhere down the hall I could hear Ava humming something off-key to herself, doing homework or not doing homework, safe either way, exactly where she was supposed to be.